And these companies are now worth each over
Right.
$30 billion, where what they're doing is fundamentally providing a solution that you just put in your own system. Hey, developers, you need a payment
Right.
solution for your app? Stripe makes it easy. You need to handle SMS messaging, video chat? Twilio has APIs for that.
Jeremy Glassenberg, thank you for joining me on 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great. Are you ready to talk about APIs, developers, developer relations?
Always am.
I am extremely excited. I've been talking to quite a few, technology enthusiasts, entrepreneurs, investors about all sorts of different customers in different markets. I'm excited to dive deep now into the developer market and what it means to build products that developers love. What do APIs mean, not just on a technical level, but also, historically, how have they shaped our use of technology and creating a more integrated world? But before all that, Jeremy, tell me a little bit about yourself and throw in there a little bit about, being the mascot for Firefox. I think that would be fascinating.
Oh, right, that little side item. All right, well, high level, been doing the product management thing for a little over 12 years now, with a specialty and just kind of irrational obsession with APIs and developer experiences. What I'm most well known for is Box. I was basically the first hire for their developer platform as a PM, and basically over time I built out everything necessary there to get a developer ecosystem going. I've also built out a developer platform over at a Tradeshift. That's the other unicorn company I'm allowed to talk about. As a consultant, I've helped several other now unicorn companies either build and launch or redesign, re-implement, and relaunch their APIs. We're working really in a range of industries: enterprise software, education software, drones, even the private space industry. It's a nice thing about working on APIs. You really just can help out many spaces.
So the Firefox mascot, how did you even get involved with Firefox Mozilla, and what did you end up with the mascot?
Yeah, and if you want the full story, I actually interviewed at Mozilla while in grad school. Uh, got rejected. And I accepted the decision because at the time I had very little work experience, and that was the concern. But I just really liked the people I met. I learned a lot about their open source community, and I wanted to get involved afterwards, and so I did. That actually was a great story of overall just how karma can really help out with your career, because at one point they were interested in hiring me again, and at the time I wasn't about to leave the startup I was at, so they understood that I was genuinely just helping them out because I wanted to help them out. But the recruiters who remember that actually went on to become talent partners at VC firms. So my time at Mozilla unintentionally helped me out over the course of my career. But the Firefox mascot, at one point I was invited to, I think it was Firefox's fifth birthday party. And whoever was supposed to be in the costume basically got overheated. So someone asked if I was willing to help out, and sent me the photo. Long story short, Firefox is one wild guy.
I love that. I completely love that. Jeremy, you mentioned that you have this weird obsession and passion for APIs. So before we talk about, the history of APIs and how critical they are to our developer economy today, tell me a little bit about what APIs are, even for the people that may be non-technical listening to this.
Yeah, and I have to emphasize that my focus has been mostly on web APIs. But APIs, application
Hmm.
programming interfaces, they're basically a way of letting different programs talk to each other. In the web, what that can mean for the semi-technical folk is, when you go to a browser and you're going to google.com, you're going to get back some HTML and JavaScript, some stuff that tells Chrome this is what to show to the user. In an API, we used to return XML, now we're returning JSON, but it's a format that basically tells another program what's going on. So it's just a way of letting apps interact with each other more than the users having their direct interactions. And that allows some more automated operations to happen in the background. And as we've seen in the use cases, a lot of companies basically enabling more for their customers than they ever could by partnering with other experts, by partnering with other services.
Right. So tell me a little bit about what opportunities this opens up, because if we're looking at the world until, let's say, 1970, 1980, even before the internet, every company, technology company, needed to build its own on-premise technology that serves itself, right? What has this communication and integration, what opportunities has this opened up for the world?
Well, we've seen before the days of the internet the benefits of opening up your operating system. That was, the big thing for Microsoft Windows when they said we're going to let anyone write apps on top of our software. We're going to be cross-platform. We're going to be open to others to build and write apps. And what happens there is then you enable much more functionality for your users. There are many other use cases
Right.
for APIs, though. But if we get into web APIs, when I joined Box back in '08, we actually had several value propositions for the APIs. Box is, in its simplicity, it's a way to upload files, download files, do other stuff good too. It's an online content management collaboration solution. Box's
Mhm.
marketing team is going to hate me for saying this, but many will say we're the enterprise version of Dropbox. But basically, we had actually three key value points for our APIs. One was having our APIs as a feature solution for channel partners. So it could be a mobile app that needed to get content on and off of their application or utilize sharing functionality. And so through our APIs, they could enable that if they just let their users connect with Box. So we were a feature benefit, and then those sort of partners could bring us new users. Item two was then we had customers coming in asking, do you have this capability? And maybe we didn't. Maybe we weren't even going to build it because it was either one off or it was going to be too difficult. But hey, can someone
Right.
else do it? And we would find someone else who could provide the solution, help us close these $300,000, $400,000 plus deals. And then number three was where our
Amazing.
customers had their own infrastructure, their own internal network, and they want to connect their existing internal software with what we had at Box to further automate the experience. So very often it's for internal tools. There are many, many value points for a developer platform, many ways to monetize. John Musser, who's the founder of Programmable Web, he regularly gave a talk at this conference, GlueCon. We would highlight all of the new ways of monetization, and his just diagram will keep getting bigger and bigger every year. But among others, we could talk about, a Box was a customer-facing product with a complementary platform. What we're seeing now are Stripes and Twilios and these companies where the core product is an API. And these companies are now worth each over
Right.
$30 billion, where what they're doing is fundamentally providing a solution that you just put in your own system. Hey, developers, you need a payment
Right.
solution for your app? Stripe makes it easy. You need to handle SMS messaging, video chat? Twilio has APIs for that.
Right. So what I'm hearing from you, Jeremy, is that one of the biggest shifts that we've seen, especially in the last 10 years, is companies understanding there are these software needs that a lot of different organizations have. These needs are quite complicated, convoluted, and they cost quite a lot of money to maintain and make sure that they're really scalable and secure as well. So if we can provide those solutions in the form of a web API, then others around the world can then just license it from us and enjoy them. Where are we headed with this integration? Are we just opening ourselves up to, an explosion of a marketplace? Where do you see the world of APIs moving?
When it comes to marketplaces, I happen to actually teach a course on that, and this isn't to advertise. Just give a disclaimer: that course is 2.5 hours long, so that's a whole other topic. But marketplaces certainly come up in the world of APIs, app marketplaces, Salesforce's App
Right.
Exchange, and that's one business model where APIs come up. In general, I like to just at the highest level categorize the businesses by those companies that have a core customer consumer facing product with a complementary platform. And then the Stripes and the Twilios of the world where the platform is the product. And also API tooling. Now, for any of these, marketplaces come up. API tooling, by the way, is more when you're actually building an API. There are these tools to help you build the API, and that's been trending very well over the
Right.
past few years. But among the trends we've seen were in category A, many companies whose business model are very much dependent on having those APIs. At some companies, it's 30% of the revenue. At other companies, it's 99% of the revenue requires the APIs in enterprise tech. It may not be fundamentally an API
Right.
company, but they need it for every deal they're closing. Um, and when it comes to the APIs only companies, we've seen multiple decacorns, $30 billion plus companies forming in the last few years. And so, we only anticipate more of that. Many VCs have spoken with me about that. And yes, I anticipate more of that. And
Right.
all the while, there have been these, hipsters in API world who were trying to whip up these solutions to make it easier. And that's a trend I like to talk about of the general trends and expectations and product quality and what it takes to actually build APIs today. But the API tooling space has really
Please.
taken off in the last couple of years. We're just starting to see some unicorns. It's not as big as the, API's core companies, but the tooling
Mm-hmm.
space is doing well as the demand for APIs rise, as the expectations, the standards now for developers, they're expecting better standards for their APIs. And then the need to be able to build good APIs as well, that's coming up more and more. So we are seeing more demand in the API tooling space.
So tell me a little, give me a broad understanding of what is this tooling space that you're talking about? What does it mean to an API tool for those API centered companies?
So at its core, there's usually the API gateway. It's basically when you're building and ready to launch an API, there's this tool to help you manage the API. It sits at the front, it takes in those API requests, and it can filter for you. It can handle DDoS attacks. It can handle rate limiting, where maybe an app that didn't have any malicious intent is just doing something wrong. They're making too many calls, and maybe it can catch some errors for you. But beyond that, there are these other tools to help you with the design of the APIs and the developer community aspect itself. That goes to what I call the API product lifecycle. And let me know if I'm going off topic here, but something I always emphasize when it comes to
No, no, no. This is
APIs,
fantastic.
and this applies for tooling, for API only companies, for anything when you're working on an API. I've seen a lot of success. I've also seen many spectacular failures. And the number one reason for failures are when these companies get the idea of if you build it, they will come, which we know doesn't work anywhere else in
Right.
product management, but for whatever reason, that's still lingering in the world of APIs. And by the way, as a Chicagoan, I have to note if so the movie where this actually comes from, Field of Dreams. What actually happens is
Right.
they build this baseball field that attracts the ghosts of the Chicago White Sox players who took a bribe to throw a World Series. When you think about it, even in the movie where this comes from, they didn't really attract the kind of customers you want. Um, but sometimes they think it's by developers for developers. So the business folk are going to say, let's just throw this problem at the engineers. And the engineers are saying, like, what do we do? I mean, we have some internal APIs. Let's slap some documentation on it. We don't really know what we're doing here. And they
And that's
struggle.
where you come in, right?
That's where we come in. And so what I encourage is the API product lifecycle. And something very interesting that's happening is there's this trend of encouraging API standards, making it easier to design certain consistent quality APIs. And some of the tools originally were helpful for developers who are whipping up internal APIs, but now it's about supporting the API product cycle, which I should clarify, it's basically treat this like a product problem. It's just that your customers happen to be developers. So
And what does that mean, Jeremy? Because I think that that's an important distinction because there's very different I think that first of all, obviously developers, we are a special kind of species and we have different expectations and we absorb and we give feedback in a different way. What does that mean to have developers as your primary customer?
So let's take Box as an example. This is a company where we had a core customer facing product, and then the APIs were for partners, various types of partners. Okay, well, who are the partners we're going to be working with? What are the sort of apps they're going to build? How do we make it as easy as possible for them to build those apps? Sometimes it's in the design of your APIs. Sometimes it's in the additional tooling of the APIs, around the APIs. For instance, over at Box, we found that there were many um, web services who just want to let their users move a file in their web service over to Box rather than having to download it to their desktop and then uploading it to Box. Now, in order to do this with
Right.
a basic API that says you can upload files, you can get a user's folder structure and display that to the user, you can handle authentication, it would still take a decent number of API calls to do this. But we saw enough companies doing the
Right.
same thing, so we figured, can we just make it easier for them? Do we give them a script? In their case, we actually had at one point just a URL, box.com/import. You put that link in front of the download link, and it would just send the user over to Box, and we would authenticate the user and let them, pick a folder and upload for them. So we just made their lives easier. As another example, I once worked in the supply chain in invoicing, and this was a company that in principle was APIs first, eat your own dog food. Also RESTful. I shouldn't share too much detail around it, but REST is basically a common standard for a way to design structured, scalable APIs well. And they had all of that. And they had this elegant API that didn't fit for their use cases. In, say, the world of invoicing, it should take, you want to have one API call, say, create an invoice. It took 5 API calls. Because you can apply these standards of REST and everything else, but if you're not thinking through what are the sort of apps that are going to be built, what are they trying to do, and then make it easier, you're not going to have a good developer experience. So it starts with understanding your
100%.
developers, knowing the kind of things they're going to do, and then designing your APIs according to use case, then implementing the APIs.
And that's really where the product side of things comes about, right? That's where you're saying that it's not just, take whatever existing APIs we have, let's slap on some documentation on them and just release them. It's really putting it as a product facing agenda, understanding what at the end are the primary use cases, and do our APIs satisfy those product requirements that our users actually want. They obviously don't want to call those 5 APIs to get to their end result. They want to call this one RESTful API, right?
Yeah. And I've known the Twilio folk from their early days, and I knew they were going to take off because they understood this. They had, just as any good product manager has customer empathy, they had developer empathy. And they designed APIs well, and they designed a good developer experience. Stripe was famous for this as well. They actually did it without product managers. It was by engineers for engineers. So Twilio was a company I've known since the early days, and I could tell they were going to take off because they have what we call developer empathy, which is just like customer empathy for any other area of product. And Stripe as well, you could see it. They designed their APIs based on use case, and they designed their developer website accordingly. Stripe was famous for this really elegant style of documentation. They did it without product managers. It was by engineers for engineers at Stripe, but it wasn't by engineers for themselves. It was engineers who understood what their developer community needed. They listened to that community and they built accordingly.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Jeremy, before we leave, first, I have to thank you for being so generous with your time. I know how busy you are. I also have to ask, why are you so passionate about this? There's all sorts of different things you can do with your skill sets and with technology in general. What makes you so excited and passionate about building great tools for developers and creating this integrated workspace?
Yeah, I've been in APIs since before the 2009 API craze when APIs got cool, but I'm not a hipster. Definitely not a hipster. But basically, if you want the story, it goes back to, I guess, late 2005. Do you remember iGoogle?
Wow.
You remember this thing? It was an alternative homepage for Google where it was this customizable homepage where you could install these third-party tools and everything was iframed in.
Wow.
And I saw that and I was thinking, can I make the web work like an operating system? When I had this idea, the idea was basically iGoogle on caffeine. It's called a web top afterwards. A few companies tried it. We had a web page that looked like a desktop operating system. You could install web apps and run them all. But I had enough sense to figure out that that idea wasn't actually valuable. The web as an OS was not going to be like a desktop. But one way or another, the web could be an OS if services could talk to each other more. If it was less about the website and more about the APIs to allow these services to talk to each other. So I was just in grad school, which was an MBA program, hacking away at whatever APIs I could find. I was actually at one point a top 15 iGoogle gadget developer. And eventually I found for the first time ever a product role that was focused just on APIs at a company I hadn't heard of at the time. I actually found the job listing on Craigslist, which was Box. And Aaron Levy there was excited about APIs before they were popular too. And we demonstrated value in the company, and APIs just took off as a bunch of other companies demonstrated the value as well.
I love that. Jeremy, thank you so, so much for this. Before we leave, the most important question, 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Uh, I should take more time to think about that, but I could just say
Whatever comes to mind. This is not a hard
you know,
commitment.
I don't want to say irrationally developer obsessed. I think I need to have developer obsessed in some way. Developer experience
I love
obsessed.
that.
How about that?
I love that, and I think it fits perfectly to what we've been discussing these past 20 minutes. Jeremy, thank you very, very much. Stay safe and stay healthy, and continue promoting APIs and developer tools for the rest of the world, because that's where we're headed. And I just love the collaboration. I love that everything is at our fingertips, and almost anything that I need to build, I can pretty much call on an API, and somebody much smarter and more talented did that for me. So I think it's remarkable to me. So thank you for taking the time to do this with me.
Happy to chat. Happy to help.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.